Hey guys, I've noticed that my ZEB fork sometimes feels harsh. With some input from my Ding Fu friend Matt, and with a little research, I watched a video on fork burnishings produced by Evans eMTB Saga. By the way, Evans eMTB Saga is an excellent channel for information about mountain bikes. If you've not already done so, I would strongly encourage you to subscribe to his channel and watch his videos. They're very well done, professionally produced, and they give you tons of information. Evan's fork burnishing video is no exception. It's a very well done video. In the video, Evan talks about the same problem with his ZEB fork that I was having with my ZEB fork. And he shows you how he solved the problem. Basically, he bought a fork burnishing tool and he used it on the lowers to free the fork up, thereby allowing the lower stanchions or the stanchions to move freely in the lower. Now, following Matt's advice and Evan's video, I bought a fork burnishing tool from RMS, also known as relative motion suspension. Once I got the tool and used it on my fork, I realized the tool's pretty easy to use, but holding the lower and inserting the tool can be awkward. So to aid in the burnishing process, I built a jig. That jig is what I want to share with you today. So this is a video about a DIY jig that I built to assist with the fork burnishing process. Let's get to it. Okay guys, just to start back at the thumbnail, the question I showed on the thumbnail, a rack for lowers and why, and the answer to that question is the rack really helps hold the lowers in when you're doing burnishing on the fork, the lowers of the fork. Now here I go showing a video of me demonstrate how awkward this process was for me. There are two bushings inside that lower, and what I'm doing, I'm pushing the burnishing tool through the first bushing, and as you can see, I'm trying to hold the fork lower with my foot. It's very hard to get a good grip on it. It moves around, and you're also, the first couple of times you go through that fork, it's pretty hard to push that tool through the fork burnishing, but eventually I get it, so I go through the first bushing. Now I'm through the second bushing, and once you get through that, then you got to pull it back. So now I'm pulling it back up through the bushing, through the lowest bushing, and then pulling it up through the top bushing. And as I said, a pretty awkward process, and I felt like I could make a jig that would make it a lot easier. So this is the burnishing jig that I came up with. On the left side, I've sort of shown the components of this jig. The number one is a T, which I made out of pipe. And number two is 2x4s with foam. And obviously what you want to do here is have the fork lower rest up against that foam. And number three are straps, which will help lower or hold the fork lower in place when you're pushing the tool. Number four are some anchors. So the 2x4s are anchored to stay in a perpendicular position by these metal anchors that I've screwed in. And number five, I've just used some scrap wood to put this together. The picture on the right actually shows the lower once it's put into the burnishing jig. And once again, you can see it's attached to the T in the green one. And in number two, you can see that the lower is resting up against the foam. And in number three, the straps have been pulled around and are holding the lower. And in 4 and 5, those are just the anchors and the scrap wood again. But I've also shown in this number 6 that basically you can place your foot and hold the jig down on the floor, so it'll be easy to to push the burnishing tool in and pull it out. The first step, though, is I've got the fork lower over in the top left, And the white thing in the lower is just a precaution I use whenever I have the wheel out of the fork, and that's just a piece of PVC pipe that sort of is a placeholder to prevent from accidentally collapsing the lower. So I pull the axle out and pull the placeholder out in the second picture. And then in the third picture, I put the lower down on that T, that metal T, and then insert the axle to hold it in place. The second step is I take the rubber straps and wind them around the lower. And in the first picture, I'm just putting the strap around the lower. And then once I get the strap around, I attach it to the back with some Velcro. And in the picture in the far right, you can see what the fork lower looks like when it's all strapped in. This shows a picture of the front and back of the jig with the fork lower in it where it's ready to be burnished. And in the front view, you can see that it's the fork lower is sitting in the jig. And in the back view, you can see how the Velcro is used to, attach the straps. And also, too, as I'm showing with the red arrow, I have a little place for my Allen wrench tool that I use to insert the axle and take it out, and also the little white placeholder PVC pipe. I have a little place there in the back, and that just allows me to have a place where I can, put the tools I'm using and know where they are and not lose them in the process. The next picture shows me actually burnishing the fork in the lower, and hopefully you can see how the process is much more expedited with the jig. So here I go, got my feet holding down, pushing the burnishing tool through, pulling it back over the top. So as you can see, that went for me a lot more smoothly and a lot quicker, a lot easier to do with the jig. It just holds the fork in place. So I hope I've given you guys something to think about. That's what the fork burnishing jig does, and I'll see you guys at the top.